This impact investment workshop, Funding Fashion Web 3, will dissect fashion's new frontier, the metaverse. It will also decode the opportunities that lie ahead for the industry through the lens of investors.
This workshop will be moderated by Piers Hopkins, founding partner at lablaco. Piers, take it away.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Really excited to kind of get started on this conversation. As Daniel just mentioned, I'm your moderator for today. My name is Piers Hopkins, my background, I live and work in China. My background has been really in media, new media, and specifically also in the fashion industry. At lablaco, I'm looking after their commercial operations, so really figuring out how to monetize this business in a way that's also responsible, because given what we do as a business is it's about circularity and sustainability as well. So that's just a very, very brief background about me. I do want to get stuck into Web3 and basically what is this year's 2021 CFS Impact Investment Workshop on specifically funding fashion Web3. I would love it if we go around quickly and have each one of you provide a 30-second to 1-minute introduction to yourselves, if that's okay. Leslie, I would love to start with you purely because on my screen, you happen to be to my right, and we'll go around like that. And once you're done, let me know and I'll kind of point to the next person.
Great. So I'm Leslie Goldman. I'm one of the general partners and co-founders of the Artemis Fund. We are a female-focused fund. We only invest in female founders that are addressing diversification of wealth through fintech, e-commerce, and care tech. And one of our companies is a company called DressX, a digital clothing company. And I'm sure I will talk about that more later.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Shashi, if you wouldn't mind, you're next on my screen.
Yep, I'm Shashi. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Nervora. We're a Dubai-based media company and also the creators of UNXD, which is a curated NFT marketplace for digital luxury and culture. We're known for the first NFT drop that we did, which was the historically successful debut NFT collection for Dolce & Gabbana. But taking a quick step back, I've been in the crypto space for several years as an investor and one of the founders of an investment syndicate. But when it comes to fashion in particular, my company has been at the intersection of fashion and technology for a number of years. 5 years ago, we launched Vogue Arabia, which was the first ever digital first launch of Vogue, and now one of the most prominent editions of that brand globally, seen by hundreds of millions of people around the world. And in 2019, we also launched Wired in the Middle East.
So much. Gunther, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So my name is Gunther Dobratz. I'm a partner with PwC in Zurich, where I'm leading PwC Legal. And I'm also sitting on the global board for looking after all our 4,000 lawyers around the world. I think it's 95 countries right now. And before that, I basically started 20 years ago my career in venture capital and was running one of the first Swiss venture funds ever, together with an exciting team. And today I, together with two friends, have Excelixis, which is a special purpose vehicle, which we set up and which is investing in particular in, as you mentioned that just before, in blockchain and in circularity. The idea being that blockchain, obviously, as an idea in the system, will take away a lot of the stuff that is going on right now and help to increase transparency and so forth.
Thank you so much. Megan, last but not least.
Hi, Megan Casper. I'm a member of Red DAO, which is a DAO specifically focused on investing and supporting and growing the ecosystem around digital fashion and fashion tech. I'm also co-founder and managing director of Magnetic Capital, which is a crypto and blockchain incubator and investor.
Thank you so much. And you were last to introduce yourself. I am going to ask you the first question as well. I think I'm going to start off with this conversation starting quite broad, and then maybe we'll kind of go a little more specific and more specific as we go on. I know everyone here, given the topic of the conversation, knows a lot about Web3, the metaverse, the intersection of fashion and technology, blockchain. But I want to make sure that we start off all on the same page, and especially for people who are watching this, we start off on the same page with an understanding of what these things actually mean. I guess, Megan, I would love to start with you and kind of ask you, when it comes to Web3, and feel free to kind of extrapolate from that. what do you think are the defining characteristics of Web3 that really makes it different to the way we previously approached the internet, and how it's going to evolve?
Well, Web3 is really all about building platforms in a decentralized environment. So Web 2 and prior were more centralized structures and systems, and Web 3 and a lot of the talk that we are now hearing about the metaverse is all about interoperability and decentralization. So not having central points of control inside of corporations or on platforms, but really having the ability to allow decentralization, sort of a DAO structure, and also giving the ability for interoperability, meaning that items or data or information can be shared across different networks in a very secure, transparent way, really. Okay.
And would it be okay to kind of dig into decentralization a little more and just kind of, what specifically does that mean, and why is that important?
Well, the blockchain, and specifically the Bitcoin blockchain, we can't speak to all of them because there's over 7,000 of them, and they're all different with their own consensus models and mechanisms. But if we look at the Bitcoin blockchain and those that have followed that model, we're operating in an entirely new environment that previously we didn't have before, and in order to transact and to share data across the internet. Web3 gives us this new ability to have platforms like Sandbox and Decentraland, where we can create environments and then move the data and information into other environments and carry our information with us in a safe, secure way. And that's really just the power of the blockchain. It's basically a ledger, a spreadsheet, if you will, that's extremely secure and backed by an algorithm called SHA-256.
And I think the next step is kind of looking at the way that blockchain facilitates kind of digital ownership, or the impact on digital ownership. Shashi, I'd love to get your thoughts on that, given the work you've done with NFTs, and also especially looking at the Dolce & Gabbana collaboration partnership you did, and I'd love for you to get your thoughts on the importance of the sex of digital ownership and the blockchain, and the ability to track digital items and own digital items on and how that was able to drive the success of that project, for example.
Yeah, I think maybe the segue from what Megan was saying is that one of the biggest differences with Web3 is that the underlying incentive mechanism for participants in the ecosystem can be much more aligned than in Web 2 and before. And in the Web 2 world, the vast majority of value in any ecosystem was really accruing to the platform operator, whereas you had lots of participants in those ecosystems that were creating value, just not able to realize any of that. So in Web 3, the underlying mechanism allows for this economy that's being created to be shared by all of the participants, which is one of the ways in which Web3 ecosystems, we believe, will be much more sustainable, because you have parties that are working together for the same goal. I think in terms of ownership, what Megan was saying also really applies, like this idea of interoperability. It's just very natural that people who buy something, very much like in the real world, want to be able to carry it with them to different environments and have that ownership persist, regardless of where they're playing. We're very, very early in that curve. Today, like the drop that we had with Dolce & Gabbana, I think, was driven by a number of different dimensions that made it successful. You had provenance, which came from this historic luxury brand that was entering the space in a really authentic way. We brought really incredible craftsmanship into what we created, both with physical goods and digital goods. There was an incredible story behind the origins of the collection and an entire utility framework that we built around the NFTs that we had. So it wasn't just about being purely digital collectibles, but an entire ecosystem that participants were able to join. I think all of those things, I don't know if I would isolate any one of those dimensions as being more important than the next, but I think that full value stack is what made this collection so special. Of course, happy to dig into that much more deeply.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, coming from a fashion kind of background, I spent the last, you know, 8+ years of my career in the fashion industry, mainly in media. And there's always this interesting thing with brands and successful brands about finding that special source that balances creativity and commercial success when it comes to attracting the consumer. You know, part of that a lot of the time is just the ability to have something which, you know, especially with luxury, something which is just in low supply, right? It's something that you can't find a lot of. You know, how do you look at that dynamic with digital products and you know, oftentimes we look at digital items as being, you know, repeatable, copyable, ad infinitum almost. How do you see that kind of that from that angle?
Yeah, in the physical world, you kind of have to take people's word at face value when they say that something is unique or scarce. In the digital world, because of the characteristics of the blockchain, you can provably show whether something is unique or not. Of course, there open up other questions as to how to deal with uniqueness across different blockchains, and that's a different conversation that I think we can maybe go into. But you're right. Like there is this idea of scarcity being intrinsically linked to value in the physical world and in the digital world. I think one of the problems in the digital world, or at least one of the challenges historically, is that people haven't historically placed a huge degree of value on digital items because of this idea that you could create them very easily and the marginal cost of production was very low. So that is one of the, I think, effects of what we created with this first collection, was actually showing that the same process and craftsmanship involved with creating high value physical products could be extended into the digital world. So the collection that we made with Dolce & Gabbana, I mean, we literally collectively spent thousands of hours to create this collection. And I think before us in the digital space, no one had invested that amount of time into creating digital fashion items. It just hadn't been done. It's not like it was rocket science to come up with the idea, just no one had actually invested the time or effort to create that. And this happens in the physical world, and this is one of the reasons why couture was such an interesting starting point for us as a platform, because the underlying idea of couture is human craftsmanship, human creation, very, very unique items. Finding a way to translate that into the digital world made a lot of sense to us. But of course, the process of doing it had to mirror the same process of doing it in the physical world in order to present it in the same way.
Fantastic. And I think at this point, I'd love to get Leslie's thoughts, given obviously your investment and work with DressX. You know, maybe just kind of you know, a big picture view of it and your thoughts, but also specifically about DressX and really maybe from an investment perspective, like what was it there that you looked at and thought this was something that, you know, there's potential here?
Yeah, so I think DressX is a really easy use case to get people's heads wrapped around, you know, because we talked about Web 3.0 and what it means, and, you know, trying to taking your own data and your own history and moving it around platforms instead of these walled gardens that like Facebook creates. So you don't have to actually log into a Facebook where they own all your data. You know, I think it's kind of ironic that Facebook came out with Meta because they're one of the problems, right? They're one of the centralized problems. Anyway, so DressX, well, first of all, we are mission driven, and I've got to say that we're not trying to invest in things that take people away from the real world. I don't want to see my kids just sucked into a metaverse to avoid humans. But DressX is a digital clothing company. They only make clothes that do not exist. And Megan, are you wearing real earrings, or are those
fake?
Real?
No, I mean, they're real. They're really digital.
DressX. So are they from, okay. So
no, these are from a different platform.
Okay. But
it's very smart.
That's a good example of, okay, so there you go. And I wish I had some DressX gear on, but, and so one of the things that really drew me to it was because fashion's the second most polluting industry, right? And 25% of garments remain unsold in the fashion world, and 1 in 9 people buys an article of clothes and either disposes of it or returns it. that is incredibly environmentally toxic. The other thing that drew me to it is our mission for financial inclusion. I mean, here you have opened up any article of clothing to any human in the world. Of course, we're talking about wearing it, not wearing it in, we're wearing it digitally, wearing it in the metaverse, but there's a whole new world being created by the metaverse, e-commerce. There's buying, trading, selling, every type of good that you see in the real world is going to happen in the metaverse. And I think, so that it provides new opportunities for people who are designers. It provides new opportunities for the creator economy to actually put on clothes and monetize themselves in a way that they could not do before. It will be additive to them. So DressX, the idea, and it's actually playing out, they're going to actually launch their own NFT marketplace right now. They're using crypto.com and others, but they are going to have, everyone will have a meta closet. And you can either buy clothes through an NFT auction, or you can buy them on the platform. NFT auction obviously would mean you're the only one with it. You can use it in your AR, in VR, in dating apps, in photographs, in gaming, for your virtual avatar. So you can pull it all over, but you will have your own meta closet. And so I think it's a very kinesthetic use case of NFTs and showing how Web 3.0 will work and the metaverse. The way that DressX makes money, obviously it's not just from NFTs, but every time somebody buys an NFT, buys a DressX garment from an auction, which is often other people's, created by other people. So they're agnostic as to, who the creator is. It's not just their own private label. Somebody buys it and then they resell it, or they could trade it. And, whoever is the originator of that NFT, in this case, DressX, gets a commission for that. It gets a fee every time it's traded. And clearly there's going to be a new legal environment for this. There's going to be DAOs created just for purchasing, as there was for the Constitution, right? And I just learned that Wyoming has its own DAO law, actually. So laws are starting to be enacted to cover all this. But anyway, I think I've answered the question, maybe.
Fantastic. Actually talking a little bit about the regulatory framework or lack thereof. Gunther, I hate to pile this kind of question on you, given the legal background you come from, and it may be a little bit boring, but would love to get your thoughts on how the current lack of legal oversight affects the industry, maybe specifically from an investment perspective, and how you see that playing out over the next few years.
I mean, it is. Sorry, Leslie. I was asking Gunther about that. It's okay. I said legal background, which is.
We you as well.
Well, we can definitely share this one. I'm half happy to answer legal questions, especially if there isn't an answer or a straight answer, but I'll try as much. I think Web3, or whatever you want to call it, what we are seeing right now is the extension of our identities into digital. And I think this is what really happens now with Web3, or whatever you want to call it. Now, the problem is that you're doing this globally, right? And all the regulations we have, they're local. Right, so you have a US regulation, Singapore regulation, a Swiss regulation, or whatever, and that doesn't do it justice anymore. So that's kind of what we're struggling with, especially when, for the past couple of years, we've been working with the biggest number of Swiss players, starting in the crypto world, but now also getting into the subsectors such as fashion. Then we kind of know what it means in Switzerland, and then we can kind of determine what it means in the UK and in Germany, and we get a grasp of what it is in Dubai and so forth. But there's nobody out there right now who knows what's going on in any world or any part of the world other than that. So that's one of the big complexities. But on the other hand, it's also a chance, because it's, I guess, the old way of how you bring innovation into the world, and especially if it is a disruptive innovation, such as ideas that are being based on blockchain, which in itself is an exponential technology and is really new. So it's kind of a variable of when you create something without regulation and when you bring the regulation in. So right now you basically have the regulation once you start to touch upon it, such as when you get into regulated industries, be it banking or any of those. kind of things, and otherwise you're kind of free. But truth is, there's a gazillion of regulations out there, and it's very difficult from an investment perspective to decide what does make sense, what is kind of clean, or where are you facing a big risk that somebody will come after you right now. Right? So there's no clear answer to that, but I'm actually okay with that, as long as you're aware of the risks and you're kind of determining that. But Leslie also had some points on that, so I want to give you the chance, of course.
Yeah, I would love to pass it on.
Well, I was taking it to, I was trying to take it to where the puck will be, but everything's going to be investable. There's going to be real estate. There's going to be all the meta commerce. There's going to be, it's like derivatives trading. You're going to trade NFTs, and then you're going to borrow NFTs, and you're going to take loans out against NFTs. And there are going to be all these new avenues of financial services and all these derivatives. And then you're going to have real estate law in the metaverse. You're going to have e-commerce laws in the metaverse. You're going to have laws regulating DAOs because they're SPVs, it's securities. And so that's why you're starting to see them crop up. It's an entirely new industry, legal industry, and it'll be interesting to see when law schools start picking it up. But the lawyers' lobby is very, very strong, and so it's just going to create more revenue for lawyers and more avenues for lawyers.
as if we needed that.
I think I agree on this. And one example I'm always bringing is it's really the earliest of days, right? I think the one thing you shouldn't do is compare it to other industries and how they've developed, but let me just do it nevertheless. So if I compare it to the rise of the internet 2 or whatever you want to call it, we're maybe in 97 or 99 or God knows what, right? So there isn't even a search engine out there, or one that doesn't exist today, and Google and Facebook or Meta or whatever haven't even been created yet, right? So it's only starting. And yes, I agree fully with what you're saying, Leslie, in terms of the metaverse. But also there's the real world out there, right? And right now there's maybe 2-3% of whatever we see hanging around us or basically guarding our life investable. And I think the one thing that will happen with the digitalization, with the decentralization, with blockchain coming in as an infrastructure technology, is that all of that will become bankable in the widest sense. And let's not go into what a bank will actually be, but also that will be investable. So, I mean, I have no idea what we will be seeing 10 years from now, but it's going to be one of the most amazing journeys we ever found ourselves on, right?
Megan, given you were in the crypto space and the leveraging of blockchain from such an early time, and obviously saw the potential there before there was any regulation at all. Do you see the current breakout into the mainstream as being again, I think from an investments perspective specifically, just another huge opportunity as it becomes much more accessible to just an exponentially large number of people?
Well, for me, it's super exciting because, in 2015, I was conceptualizing the idea of being able to wear digital fashion in augmented reality and virtual reality. And people thought I was crazy. But I knew that the technology would enable the ability to do this because, as Shashi said earlier, people don't put value on items if they can't ensure that, they're not replicatable, that you can't replicate them, and that there's real value behind it. So the blockchain enables that ability. It's just super exciting to watch. And this year has really been the sort of spark to the capabilities and investment opportunities in fashion. Fashion is a $2.5 trillion industry, and I believe that in the next 20 years, that could easily double or triple because of the amount of digital fashion that we'll have accessible to us. Leslie was speaking to meta closets and digital closets. I think that, we have our physical closets now that maybe have a few hundred pieces in them. 40% of the Western world closets go unworn. It's extremely toxic and polluting for our environment. So this is a huge ESG play and investment, but it's also super exciting because we're expanding the amount of items. Imagine you have a few hundred items in the physical. In the digital now, we're opening up the possibilities of having hundreds of thousands of items that you can just constantly, change. While you're in a metaverse, you can change what you're wearing while you're talking, and it's going to be really super exciting to experience these things. So yeah, in 2015, I could see this happening just with the smart contracts and my understanding and knowledge of the intelligence layer that Ethereum had built on top of the blockchain. But now there's real use case and usability, and wearable fashion, I think, will be the largest category in the NFT space, bar none.
I agree.
Sorry, was someone going to say something?
No, I just said I agree.
Okay. I want to definitely, it's been raised a couple times by some of you already, the sustainability and the circularity aspect and the ability to have a positive impact on the environment as well. I definitely want to get stuck into that at some point later today. I want to pause and look at fashion specifically and kind of why fashion, and why it's such a great fit for this industry and why it's really been picked up so quickly as well. Shashi, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Obviously, we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but given your experience, launching fashion-related NFTs, we'd love to know, from your perspective, why you think fashion is such a great fit and where that takes us.
Yeah, so why fashion? It's because it's so encompassing. Fashion is an aesthetic identity, whether it's physical or digital. And digital applied to fashion, I think, isn't just about digital clothing in games or virtual worlds, but also any platforms that have digital representations of ourselves. Fashion in the real world is about personal identity, and that will translate into the digital world as well. So it's natural that people will gravitate towards fashion as they make their home in the metaverse. I think, kind of like what Megan was saying, fashion is one of the first killer use cases in the metaverse as well. So in the real world, fashion plays an important role in identity setting, but you also have all these other aspects that help people to create their personality in the real world, even things like body language and nonverbal cues. But in the metaverse, those things will be far less pronounced. And so the role that fashion will play in identity setting is way more pronounced. And so it's one of the things that we think creates such a massive opportunity around fashion. Now, for brands, and specifically luxury brands that want to enter the space, I think there's a little bit of a natural tension to entering the Web3 world, because the ways in which brands played in the real world or have historically played is one in which they exert a lot more control about the process and the experience, and they have to get comfortable with the idea that there are certain things that they can control, but not everything. And that's just a little bit different. But today, I think the real opportunity for brands that are entering the space is that the current community of early adopters in the metaverse and Web3 is actually quite different than the usual demographic for fashion and luxury brands in the real world. It's a little bit more global, it's more tech savvy, it's more experimental. And so it's really an opportunity for these brands to expand the base.
Leslie, I would love to hear your thoughts on that as well, given the DressX investment as well. Kind of like, why fashion? What is it that this makes it so exciting?
Well, I mean, it's creative. First of all, we're talking about screens, or going into the screens, or seeing each other, and there's it's limitless, like boundaryless, and being able to create and wear anything you want. It just makes it, as Shashi said, the perfect use case, and Megan said it as well. So it's so easy, and it's so portable. If you have a meta closet, which Megan was talking about, you can take any of those garments and use them anywhere. And also, there are people that only dream of being able to wear a Dolce & Gabbana dress. There are people that dream of wearing a $25,000 wedding dress, but they're only going to wear it for pictures, right? They really only want it for pictures. They go get married on a beach, and then go take your picture somewhere else and wear a beautiful, whatever, Louis Vuitton, or who's the most expensive dress? I don't even know. And now you can do that. You could do that. You can buy it for probably a couple $100, and then probably you have to give it back if you probably won't own that digital piece, or you could go buy it at an auction, but that might be very expensive. So it's, to me, again, it's just such a clear and obvious use case. I mean, I've been involved with crypto for years, but not fashion for years. I'm kind of a, regular plain clothes, but I've always wanted to be able to get up in the morning and Zoom and not get dressed. I would love to have a digital outfit on right now. Or I've always felt that. And in the last couple of years, as people interview, for example, and they can't even afford a suit. Imagine paying $20 to be able to do your interview on Zoom and look nice if this is your first time going for a job. So I think about all the good use cases, not the ones that disconnect us.
And the reality is, given how comfortable we are now with remote work, we'll probably, have to, not have to worry about what we wear to the office for a lot of people for the future.
Right.
So talking a little bit and moving the conversation to kind of sustainability and circularity, Gunther, would love to kind of get your thoughts on how, this, I guess let's start pretty big picture regarding circularity just in general, and why you think circularity, which obviously a lot of the ability of circularity kind of driven by blockchain or the kind of the technology, underlying technology of blockchain enabling circularity. Why circularity is important for the fashion industry?
Well, first of all, I think circularity is important for any industry, and it's what we should really be. And if you look around us, everything moves in circles, right? If a leaf falls from a tree, this doesn't become waste. It basically becomes soil again and then feeds the next tree and whatnot. And it's also true for us, right? The moment we vanish as people in general, we go back into the system, at least the body part that constitutes us. The one thing that does not apply to that, and the one thing that creates all of this madness out there, and sorry for using that word, but it's the only one I can think of, well, that is what we've done basically. I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit on this, but with the Industrial Revolution, right? Everything we've built on that, and with we, I mean the guys, right? Because they were doing that a bit more than the women, who were thinking a bit more and who are coming to power now, and that is a good thing, right? And they're asking the questions a lot more than guys. But we've built those beautiful towers in the countries, and we've created industries that are, as has been discussed, super wasteful and not working anymore. So I think wherever we do something, we need to move it into circularity, and especially here at PwC, which is obviously one of those beautiful pillar building companies out there, but we are starting to try to do that as well. But obviously in fashion, it does have a huge impact, right, there. And it starts with things like, I mean, the stuff I'm wearing, right? I'm wearing it now for 3 years, because guess what? That thing is still there, but it's not circular. The only thing that is truly circular is that shirt underneath, which is from a Swiss retailer, and I know I can throw it into my bin at home in the garden, or I can bring it back to them and they will recycle it 100% and give it to me. And what it has done is I've moved from 65 t-shirts in my closet, which I've never been wearing, to 14 of those, which is the maximum I ever need. And we can debate that. Probably I get away with 7, right? And that is a personal change that is happening with me. And I like the idea, I can do it digitally. Well, I can't do it right now. And obviously I can't do the beautiful thing that Megan is doing right now, but eventually we'll be getting there. And I think when it comes to what we're wearing, what we really need, will hopefully change, and one way we will have a circular economy going around us.
And from an investment perspective, because I think looking at the impact of circularity, obviously it's huge. And I think for the first time that I've been working in fashion, there's starting to be a consensus that circularity is the solution. Whereas I think up until now, it's always been this vague, well, we should be more sustainable. And what does that actually mean? But at the same time, with systems that have been in place for such a long time, and obviously with such an interest on maintaining margins, because a lot of fashion still is, with very slim margins. Where do you think we start when it comes to circularity? Is it just, is there any part of the value chain which is more important than the other, or is it just a case of as time goes on, it'll happen?
I don't know who you are asking, but if it's still on me.
Oh, Gunther, I'm sorry. I was this still be.
Sure. The honest answer is I can only guess, right? I think none of us really knows. Obviously, I would like to say it's the A, B, or C. in reality, I think it will come down to what really works. In all honesty, for me, it doesn't matter. It's just important that we are starting to do that. As I said, I started with the t-shirt not because it's the most important piece for me. I started with that because it's available and it's out there. So I'm working on shoes right now. I don't know what the real driver behind is. It's probably a combination of value chains and so forth. But ultimately, I believe it comes down to people realizing that. And I've just been speaking at 2 conferences on circularity here in Switzerland. It was super interesting because there was really young people there, right? And I mean, they were like below 18, even coming from school and so forth, right? And the questions they had and the way they were thinking, it was so different from myself, right? I'm basically an adopted circularity guy, if you want to call me that, right? But I've been thinking about it for 10 years and they're already starting to think about all of that. And so, yes, they had some cool sneakers on which were not circular, but they were talking about their jeans and all of the other stuff. And they were really interested in that. And then we got into how they wanted to go surfing somewhere and talala. It was not about the old ways in which I had been brought up about being out there on the street and trying to get rich, but just doing some job, like, well, we are partly doing that anyway, but so different. So I think we will have to look at them ultimately if we really want to kind of see that. But today, in my personal view, it's just too early.
Shashi, I think media has such a big impact on the way people change the way they think. I think what's really interesting, what Gunther just mentioned, was how a new generation is really looking at the same things that we've been doing or the same items that we've been buying, but really changing their expectations of what they think should happen to those items afterwards or in the way that they're made. Do you, as someone who obviously owns and runs incredibly influential media outlets in parts of the world, look at that as part of your responsibility, one, and two, do you see that the consumer has started to genuinely change the way that they view fashion and the importance of sustainability or circularity when it comes to consumption?
Yeah, I think the answer to both of those questions is yes. We were one of the first editions of Vogue to hire a sustainability editor. Condé Nast was the first media company to sign the UN Climate Development Pledge as well. So it is something that we take seriously, and we think about a lot in terms of how we produce as well. Of course, print magazines aren't or haven't historically been seen as the most sustainable forms of media, but where we can, we use recycled paper, or if we have to use plastic bags, it's recycled plastic as well. In the way in which we think, we are a digitally led organization. We were the first edition of Vogue to launch digital first, and so that is just intrinsic to how we think. And I think any organization, whether an institutional media company or not, has a responsibility to help shape things for the good. So that's kind of how we think. I think from a brand perspective, the first phase of brands thinking about this space was one of looking at it from a positioning or a marketing or a PR perspective. It's taken a little bit of time for organizations to deeply be able to commit to being sustainable. That is something that can't happen overnight. You see some organizations that are just moving a lot faster in the space, and I think that's going to come as more of a pull from the consumers rather than a push from the organizations. Maintaining the status quo is just way too easy for everyone, ourselves included. I think it's the consumers that are going to demand it. And I have to admit, just over the last couple of years, I've been really impressed by how the youth today put their money where their mouth is. It's not just a matter of shouting about things, but they actually deeply believe in these things. And I think that's where the change is going to come from.
I think Vogue is doing, by the way, great job highlighting the sustainability in fashion. So kudos.
Leslie, now that you bring that up, actually, when it comes to DressX, do you look at coverage in kind of traditional, I won't say traditional, but Vogue is one of the earliest or the most well-known fashion media publications in the world. Do you look at DressX and think we should be covered in these kind of magazines? Is that that's something that you look at as being like obviously important, or is it more that, I think Shashi mentioned earlier that your digital fashion is reaching kind of a new audience and a new consumer that almost maybe wouldn't consume that kind of stuff. So, do you see that being overlap? Is that important to you, or is it just, not necessary?
Yeah, I mean, they are getting a lot of coverage actually by Vogue and by lots of other magazines. And it is really, what it's doing is, I think, raising awareness, because every time they're in one of those magazines, they talk about sustainable fashion. They use the word sustainability. And then the other thing is they talk about the amount of water and CO2 that is saved by purchasing one item of digital clothes. And the more you have that in front of you, like, it really makes it hard it makes you really think about buying a piece of clothing when you know how much water and CO2 was emitted to make it. And then if you think about how much energy is taken to actually distribute and then discard it, it just piles on. So yeah, I mean, I think that raising awareness in any way, shape, or form is a good thing. I just wanted to let you all know, and maybe you already know, but yesterday the Ellen MacArthur Foundation published another article about scaling a wider range of circular business models. And they talk about, clothing in particular, more use per user, which I think Gunther demonstrated, more users per product, that's recycling them, renting them, whatever, thread up. And then the third thing is no physical product. And it's a really good article. They actually mention DressX, but they mention other companies as well.
Do you see, Leslie, again, do you see other investment opportunities for your firm in companies who are kind of pushing that circularity angle? Is that something that you're specifically looking at?
Oh, yes, we do. We looked at a company that reuses containers for food containers, and actually it's a logistics company where it's not just about they don't just create biodegradable packaging, they create packaging that is reusable containers, and they make it seamless for the consumer to be able to return it and then reuse it again. And so they're coordinating with, this is food, obviously not fashion, but they're coordinating with lots and lots of restaurants and food delivery companies, et cetera, because that's a huge issue as well. So that's a perfect example of upcycled products. But yes, we're looking all the time at companies that are in the circular economy space.
Megan, given that you're the only one of us wearing digital fashion items today, it would be remiss of me not to ask you about your experience purchasing them and what led you to that, and then of course, obviously, I think really from an investment perspective, looking at this industry, what are you looking for when it comes to kind of digital items and fashion?
Well, I think my generation and the generations below me we're finding that they're discovering a lot about fashion and brands through metaverse 1.0 platforms, right? Like Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox. There's a lot of brand partnerships and high-end luxury fashion that's being injected into those platforms, and people are learning about it that way. And I think that that'll continue. And I also, we're seeing that, the metaverse, and when we talk about metaverse 2.0, it's, this idea of decentralization and interoperability and really owning your items, because in the old platforms, you don't really own your items. You're buying something that the platform owns. But I think really the idea that, people are able to own their items for the first time. This also offers a new capability where they can, like Leslie said, there's a mimic of financial products that are happening, where you can lock it into a smart contract, take a loan against it. Different animations happen, like my earrings could actually be animated right now, whereas in the physical they can't. So there's a lot of capabilities that are unlocked through the digitization and dematerialization of the physical. And then, kind of going back, I actually just did a shoot for an article, and in the shoot, I wore a solid black tight fitted outfit, and all of my clothes are going to be superimposed. So the clothing actually didn't have to be shipped on shoot, whereas when you do photo shoots, trunks of clothes get shipped all around the world, and this is also very polluting for the industry. But the clothes themselves didn't actually have to be manufactured or made. So this is another business model, I think, that'll come out of digitization of fashion, where it's on-demand manufacturing. You buy something in the digital, or you use it to have like a digital tailor as a service to superimpose on an existing photo or in a video. But you don't actually need the physical item. And if you want the physical item, you can order it on demand. I think we're going to move to that very quickly, this model overall, through the entire supply chain of fashion. There's a company called Flip that I just invested in, and it's so cool because it democratizes being a fashion designer. So a child in Ghana can get on, they just need a device and Wi-Fi. They can get on to the app, create digital fashion, a whole clothing line, sneakers, any type of apparel, accessories, launch it, share it with the world globally. And people can buy the digital NFTs. And then there's a mechanism inside of the app which allows for on-demand manufacturing. So that child doesn't need access to startup capital, doesn't need access to manufacturers anywhere in the world, and also doesn't need, to buy 100 or 1,000 minimum quantity of items if they're, selling fashion. So I think we're going to see a spawn of whole new digital designers come out of this metaverse shift that we're moving towards.
And for you, again, from this, obviously there's so much happening in this area. A lot of it underpinned by the infrastructure itself enabling this. When you look at investment opportunities, are you thinking, I want to invest in the infrastructure that's enabling it? You've done previously with your investments in blockchain, in crypto, or are you looking at thinking, okay, the infrastructure is basically there, but now is the time to invest in the creators who will enable, who will create things to put in the infrastructure that will drive consumption and drive people to the place. From an investment perspective, are you looking at, one over the other, or is it a little bit of both?
No, all of it very broad. So Red DAO specifically, we touch on every part of the industry. We invest in high-end luxury fashion platforms like UNXT that Shashi created, and then also platforms that are supporting emergent new artists like Charlie Cohen. And there's so many new emergent artists that are popping up, and I think will continue to pop up because this technology empowers people to be creative and unlocks their ability to, put products into the ecosystem without having the physical friction that exists today with the traditional fashion industry. So yeah, pretty much looking at the industry as a whole, a ton of new business models are coming out of this. The digital tailor as a service, which is something that DressX also offers, and then buying the NFTs directly. Whether they're just digital or tied to a physical, or also tied to experiences, or maybe unlocking, access to a future drop, or unlocking something in the metaverse. We're going to continue to see a bunch of these new business models crop up, and that's really where we're focused. Is who's creating innovative new ways to use digital fashion, and where will the market follow?
I think we're coming up to the last 10-ish, 5 to 10 minutes of our conversation. I wanted to think about, for this amount of time, really opportunities, continue the topic that we were just discussing, kind of opportunities for investment. And what I find quite interesting about this time is you have obviously tiny companies who are doing these really exciting things, and on the other end of the scale, you have some of literally the biggest market cap companies in the world, like Facebook or Nvidia, making huge investments. I mean, I saw an interview with Mark Zuckerberg. Sorry, not Facebook, Meta. I saw an interview with Mark Zuckerberg recently, who said he had spent $10 billion basically on producing or creating the metaverse. Where is the opportunity? I'm going to ask you, Leslie, as someone who obviously is based. I mean, all of you are based in investments, but where do you see the opportunity at the moment? Given we have such small amounts and such small and interesting and innovative things happening, and also in a way you could look at the metaverse and think, okay, with these huge companies who've already made these massive investments and developments in this area, is there even an opportunity to develop a metaverse that's independent anymore?
That's inherent in the name metaverse, right? It's limitless. And Facebook, as I said, is sort of antithetical to the idea of Web 3.0 because they own your data. You have to log in. So I'm curious as to how they can manage how they can be congruent with a decentralized economy and space. So yes, I think that there's enormous opportunity. We're just at the tip of the iceberg, and people are going to constantly think about what it means, what this it's a new universe, right? And we're starting from scratch with everything that we created in this world. Think about that plus way more because there's no boundaries. So yeah, plenty of space.
And Gunther, what do you think we can be doing to kind of move this in the right direction? I think we talked a lot today about all the benefits in general, benefits to the environment, benefits to individuals who normally wouldn't have access to generating revenue from their creativity. Do you think that there's a way for us to make sure that we're pushing this in the right direction, as opposed to just, obviously, we all live in a capitalist world, as opposed to just making money?
Well, the honest answer is I don't know, right? I really don't. What I'm doing is rather simple. So we've been investing in people, and we're investing in exponential technologies, and within those, very much focusing on blockchain, because we believe we do understand that a bit, and some others coming together. But it's a combination, right? If you don't believe into the people, the technology can't do anything you want it to, and the other way around as well. So that's just our way of doing it. We hope that it has some impact, some little impact, and if it does, we will be very happy. Otherwise, it's such a, we've never seen an age like that as we're living through right now. It's not just one or two technologies. There's a gazillion of exponential technologies coming together, doing everything, and all the changes we're seeing now triggered by COVID. People working from home, but globally connected, right? I mean, we have never met on this very call here, and we are doing this, right? We wouldn't have been able to do that 5 years ago. I mean, we would have, but people would not have been interested. And it's just the starting point. So honest answer is, I don't know. I'm just trying to do a little bit here and there. And I hope that anyway, I will meet all of you in person at one point soon, because I think we still need that. And I hope that then we will be wearing some things, and there will be a new fashion out there. We'll be partly in the metaverse, partly in the real world. And it's just going to be amazing.
Shashi, I'm going to move on to you with a similar kind of prophetic question. Where do you see the next few steps going, the major developments over the next few years? I think what Gunther mentioned is kind of what I've been thinking about is how much has changed in such a short space of time, and how now the concept of a metaverse has just seemed to have broken through into the mainstream, where a year ago, I mean, I think most people would be just worrying about COVID and getting on another Zoom call. So yeah, I mean, where do you see this going in the immediate kind of future?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take one step back. I think that the broader driver here is that money follows attention. And as our lives become more and more digitally mediated, people will increasingly value digital things and experiences. Ultimately, what will make the metaverse sustainable is the communities that participate in them. And the metaverse will be as sustainable as the communities that decide to participate in it. I think one of the most exciting things about the metaverse is just how it can generate economic value without the same kind of constraints that we have in the real world, which we've touched upon a lot here. And those constraints might be physical, those constraints might be temporal, those constraints might be geographic. We don't have those same constraints. So I think really anything that can enable more participants coming into the ecosystem is a good thing. Some of that's going to come through infrastructural things. Some of that's going to come from government regulation. But the more parties that we can have in the system itself, I think the more we reduce reliance on central authorities or central platforms like Facebook or Meta. And because just the underlying ethos of Web3 is to try to create incentive alignment among participants in the ecosystem, we just need more people in the space. So there are lots and lots of different parties here on this call and outside of this call that are working towards adding more people into the system, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think that really answered your question on what the short term opportunity is.
No. I mean, unless you really feel like there's something there, but I thought that was a great way to wrap it up.
The short term, or I mean, even the long term, I think it's an incredible time to be a creator. There are just more tools today, and there are less constraints than before. You don't need to have a big company behind you. You can, like Megan said, you could be in Ghana and you could become the next big designer or anything else. So that I think is really exciting for anyone who likes the process of creation, either as a supporter or as just a outside observer.
Fantastic. I think we can all get behind that. We basically kind of come to time. I wanted to open it up just quickly to see if either of you, any of you had any kind of final thoughts or final questions, either for myself or for other speakers. But if not, to let you get on with your day, and also to thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely day.
Thank you so much for joining the panel talks. Feel free to visit the galleries, the Impact Design Hub, and the Innovation Hub.